They told me it would be quiet. That was the first lie. Mostly peaceful, the funeral director had said. Just watch the monitors, lock the outer doors at midnight, and never go downstairs unless you hear the cold unit alarm. Easy paycheck. His name was Mr. Alton, a man with skin like yellowed paper and a voice that rasped like an old cassette. He never blinked. Not once, even during the interview. The only thing stranger than his stare was the chapel behind him. Dark, silent, and always locked. I should have trusted my gut and walked out right then. But I didn't, because rent was overdue, and this was the only place hiring a guy like me. David Carson, former warehouse guard. Quiet, no family, no one who'd come looking. Everrest Funeral Home sat on the edge of Franklin County, surrounded by woods and fog, with iron gates that clanged even without wind. The air always smelled like cold marble and lilies. I signed the NDA, took the keys, and on my first night, Alton handed me a folded note before leaving at exactly 11:59 p.m. No earlier, no later. If you hear the chapel organ between 2 o'clock and 3 a.m., do not open the doors, no matter who knocks. I unfolded it again after he left. It continued. They are not here for a service. They are here to finish one. I thought it was some macabre joke. I crumpled it up and tossed it in the trash. The funeral home was bigger than it looked. 2 floors, a viewing gallery, private family rooms, and a basement morgue. My post was the upstairs security office, filled with aging monitors and a painfully slow desktop computer. A red ledger sat beside it, labeled, After Hours Log, Do Not Remove. The first page had dates going back 20 years. Most entries were short. 12:43 a.m. Hallby door opened. No one there. 2:15 a.m. Organ played. No entry. 3 a.m. Crying from embalming room. Log but not confirmed. I flipped forward to the most recent pages. Then I saw it. David Carson, approved for trial watch. Next review. Pending retrieval. Retrieval. My name had already been written in, but I hadn't signed anything. The halls were silent on my first patrol. Just rows of closed doors and the quiet hum of refrigeration from below. The chapel doors, double and carved with angels, were bolted tight. A brass plate read, Do not enter after dark. At 1:17 a.m., I heard the first knock. It came from viewing room C. One soft knock, followed by another. The room was scheduled to be empty. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The lights flickered once, twice, and then settled. 3 caskets sat closed, covered with white linens. A soft ticking echoed from the corner. I turned toward it. The grandfather clock, unmoving since I arrived, now ticked in rhythm with a faint whisper. I leaned closer, and the top casket shuddered, just slightly, enough for the metal latch to rattle. I left, locked the door behind me. Didn't write it in the log, because I wasn't ready to admit it, that something was already awake in Everest, and that the worst part of my shift hadn't even begun. I watched the clock like it could save me. 2 a.m. approached slowly, painfully. The security monitors ticked forward by the minute, each second louder than the last. Nothing moved. No doors. No shadows. Just endless stillness in black and white grain. And then, at 2:03 a.m., I heard it. The organ. Soft at first. One long, trembling note. Then another. A funeral hymn, slow, broken, like it had been played by hands that didn't remember how to be alive. The sound came from behind the chapel doors, which were still locked. I checked the feed for camera 4, the chapel interior. Static, not a glitch, just a wall of white noise that pulsed in time with the organ. Then came the first knock, not from inside the chapel, from outside the front doors. 3 loud knocks, spaced perfectly. I jumped from my chair and stared at the screen, showing the front vestibule. No one was there. The outside motion sensor didn't trigger, but the knocks came again. Louder, slower, closer. I ran down the main hall toward the entry vestibule. No wind, no movement, no sound, until I passed the chapel. There, on the floor in front of the locked doors, lay a single white flower, a lily. It hadn't been there earlier. My stomach twisted. Then the doors breathed. I swear to God they did, just once. A long, slow exhale, like something behind them had leaned close, placing its mouth against the wood, and sighed. The organ stopped. I turned and sprinted, back to the office. My radio buzzed as I entered, crackling. Then a voice I didn't recognize whispered, "You left it open." I froze. All doors had been locked. I checked them myself. I clicked through the monitors again, pulse racing. Camera 9, embalming room, was showing movement. The stainless steel table at the center was wet, empty, but the slab next to it, a body bag, lay half unzipped. Inside, a pale hand, reaching upward, then slowly, gripping the table's edge. I slammed the monitor off. No, I didn't see that. The radio buzzed again. "Don't lock the doors. They come to say goodbye." I unplugged the radio. The lights in the office flickered. Then I heard footsteps. Not in the hallway. On the ceiling. Slow. Deliberate. Crawling across the plaster. The light bulb above me burst, and every monitor turned black. Except for one. Camera 4. The chapel feed had returned, and the pews were full. Dozens of shapes. Seated. Silent. All facing the altar, where a casket sat open, and my name was written on the banner above it, in loving memory of David Carson. Clocked in. Never clocked out. I didn't sleep when the shift ended. I didn't even leave. I waited for the sun to rise, watched it bleed weak light through the stained glass windows in the lobby. The organ hadn't played since 3:12 a.m., and the chapel pews had emptied as soon as the screen blinked out. But the casket with my name, that stayed burned into my mind. I opened the after-hours log and added my first honest entry. 2:03 a.m., organ played. Chapel camera showed unknown attendees. Casket labeled with my name. Door remained locked. I did not open it. I added something else, requesting to speak to Mr. Alton about early termination. But Alton never came in that morning. No one did. I was alone until well after 9 a.m., when the mortuary assistant, Kelly, arrived with 2 coffees and no clue what I'd been through. I asked her if Alton had been called out. She looked confused. He hasn't worked a morning shift in weeks. He only shows up at night. Thought you knew that. She looked at me sideways, like she wanted to say more, but didn't. Before she left, she handed me a sealed envelope with no name on it. Just the Everest seal. Inside, a punch card. 1 punch. No return time. I stuffed it in my coat and left. That night I almost didn't come back, but something pulled me, as if I owed the place something now. as if I was already late. When I returned at 11:59 p.m., Mr. Alton was there, standing at the front doors in the dark, hands folded, smiling. But it wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who knows your expiration date. He handed me the keys in silence and turned to leave. I asked him, "Who were they?" "In the chapel." He paused, didn't turn around. "Guests," he said softly. "You'll get used to them." That night, the funeral home was colder. I walked the perimeter just past 12:30 a.m. and paused by the elevator to the morgue. The temperature display on the control panel blinked red. B1, minus 22 degrees Fahrenheit, unstable. Something had triggered the alarm. I rode the elevator down. The hallway to the cold room was pitch black. The backup lights didn't come on. Only the emergency green glow over the door labeled "Bodies, Long-Term Storage." Inside, 6 freezers stood silently, each one with a clipboard. Only 5 had names. The 6th was labeled "Reserve D. Carson." I reached for the clipboard, but the freezer door began to hiss, opening on its own. Inside, I expected to find a blank tray. Instead, I saw myself, lying there, pale, mouth stitched shut, eyes open, and blinking. I slammed the freezer shut, so hard it echoed down the corridor. My ears rang, my breath fogged in the cold, and behind me, I swear I heard something whisper, "Too soon." I didn't check again. I ran back upstairs, locked the morgue elevator, and barricaded the security office with 2 chairs and a filing cabinet. My hand shook as I grabbed the logbook and wrote in a trembling scrawl, 12:44 a.m. The one freezer opened on its own. Found a body matching my description. Eyes moved. No explanation. I stared at the words. Reading them didn't make them feel real. Reading them only made them feel final. At 1:57 a.m., the hallway lights dimmed again, all at once, simultaneously, like the power had hiccuped, but the generators never hummed. And then the chapel organ began to breathe. Not play. Breathe. The sound was no longer a hymn. It was a long, slow exhalation of hollow pipes, a death rattle set to keys. It filled the halls like fog, seeping into every vent, every camera, every corner of the building. At 2:04 a.m., the door to viewing room C opened by itself. The camera feed flickered to life, and inside, one of the bodies was sitting up. I froze. The woman in the casket, an elderly woman who had passed 3 days prior, was upright, hands folded neatly in her lap. Her eyes were still closed, but her mouth had opened, whispering. Camera audio didn't work, but the caption feed picked it up. "He's not ready, but he's being called." Then her head turned, not toward the camera, but toward the door, as if waiting for someone to walk in. The feed cut out. My radio burst to life, crackling static, and beneath it, footsteps. Not mine, not Alton's. Heavy, wet steps, slapping the tile in slow, even intervals. I heard them before I saw him. The man from the freezer, me, or something wearing me, stepped into view on camera 5, walking the hallway toward the chapel, dragging something, a security badge. Mine. At 2:19 a.m., the chapel doors began to shake. Someone was inside, or something wanted out, and I hadn't followed Alton's rule. I had forgotten to lock them. The chapel doors rattled louder, hinges groaning under pressure. I could see it from the hallway camera, just past the foyer. The handles turned, slowly at first, then violently, like whoever, or whatever, was inside had lost patience. I grabbed the chapel keys and bolted from the office, my flashlight cutting through the dim. The hallway had changed. Not visibly, not structurally, but the air was thicker, heavier. The pictures of deceased clients on the memorial wall had all fallen face down, every one of them, and a single line was now carved across the plaster in long, shaky letters. Doors open, stay open. When I reached the chapel, the organ music had stopped. Silence. That was worse. I touched the door. It was warm, too warm, and pulsing beneath my palm like a heartbeat. I locked it, twice, shoved a chair under the handle for good measure, and backed away. Then something knocked back from the other side. Once, twice, then a long drag of nails, human nails, across the wood. The chair began to shake, and in that moment, I realized something horrifying. The man I saw in the freezer, the one that looked like me, he wasn't trying to kill me. He was trying to take my place. I wasn't meant to be dead. Not yet. But I had been scheduled, and now the system was trying to balance itself. As I backed down the hall, my radio hissed again. The voice was mine. Exactly mine. "I'll be clocking in soon, David. You should have left before your shift started. You belong here now." All the monitors in the office turned back on at once. Each one showed me, not me, him, standing in different rooms throughout the funeral home, reading the logbook, opening the embalming drawer, smiling into the camera. I wrote a new entry in the log. 2:41 a.m. Entity matching my appearance has breached the building. Attempts to replace me. Organ has ceased. Chapel remains locked for now. I didn't want to write the last line, but I had to. I don't think I'll survive another shift. And just as I set the pen down, the screen for camera 1, the front entrance, blinked. He was standing there. Me, in my uniform, holding my ID badge, smiling, and behind him, Mr. Alton, holding a time clock. My heart stopped. There he was, Alton, the man who had barely spoken a full sentence since I'd met him, standing calmly beside my double at the funeral home's main entrance. They weren't moving, just waiting. Camera 1 showed them in crystal clarity. Alton's gaunt face pale in the moonlight, and me, or what wore my face, holding out a punch card like it was a key to heaven, or something deeper. The radio buzzed to life again, softer this time, filled with the slow rhythm of something breathing. "Clock in, David. Let the other one rest." I turned off the monitor. Didn't matter. They weren't outside the doors anymore. They were inside. Every camera began to flicker, some showing Alton walking the hall with his funeral book in hand, others showing my double seated at the reception desk, checking names off a list that had no end. Then the power cut. Everything went dark. Only the backup lights blinked on in the hall, dim, red, like bleeding stars. The kind you only see in morgues or warnings. A low, mechanical chime echoed through the building, one I'd never heard before. Ding. Then the sound of paper sliding. The time clock had punched. Automatically. My radio crackled. Shift assigned, David Carson. Clock in time. 3:12 a.m. Clock out unavailable. That's when the crying started. From the viewing room. A long, sharp child's cry. I ran to the monitor, camera 6, hoping it was malfunctioning. But no. Inside. A small figure in funeral clothes stood beside a coffin that hadn't been there before. She turned toward the camera. No eyes, just stapled skin where her face should have been. She lifted a sign written in shaky handwriting. "He's already wearing you." Then the chapel organ roared back to life, louder than ever, shaking the walls, splitting the silence like thunder underwater. I covered my ears and ran. I made it to the main hallway, only to find it filled, not with mourners, with replicas, all of them shaped like me. Dozens of them, some crying, others laughing, one with no face, one completely still, eyes rolled back, neck broken, but smiling, and they all chanted in unison, "Clock in, clock in, clock in." I turned to flee, but the chapel doors had opened, and inside there was no casket, just a mirror, and in it, a version of me already laying down, folding my arms, as the funeral hymn reached its final note. The mirror inside the chapel wasn't glass. It was liquid, dark and rippling, like ink spilled across a grave. The version of me inside it lay still, arms folded, suit pressed. A perfect replica, a perfect corpse. And yet its eyes were open, watching, smiling. The other versions of me in the hallway, those ghostly copies, had stopped chanting. They stood now in complete silence, facing the chapel, heads bowed like mourners at a wake. I stepped back, but the mirror pulled at me. Not physically, not magnetically, but emotionally. I felt tired, like I'd worked too many shifts, like this body no longer belonged to me. I saw flashes of other funerals, ones I hadn't attended, ones I hadn't lived through. I heard a voice behind me. Soft. "Alton, the dead have no reason to leave, David. Only the living try to run." I turned. He stood at the back of the chapel, hands folded neatly, suit perfect. But his eyes, there was nothing in them. Just gray glass. Cold. He pointed toward the mirror. "Take your place." I shook my head. "I'm not dead. You're not alive here either." The copies of me began to file into the chapel. Each took a seat in the pews. Some wore bruises, others missing limbs. One had no head at all. They filled the rows in silent reverence, waiting, and then the casket appeared at the center of the altar. It hadn't been there before, but now it stood open, empty. Alton extended a hand. "We must rehearse." I ran, down the hall, past the elevator, toward the only exit I knew, the loading dock. But the exit door was gone, just brick wall and dust. The lights flickered above me. Camera 3 snapped on. I saw myself again, another version, standing in the security office, flipping through the logbook, then looking up, smiling. Then, as if to answer a silent question, he waved. "We already covered your shift." I should have passed out from exhaustion. I should have screamed, cried, or curled up and waited for dawn. But dawn never came. Not in Everest. Time had unraveled completely. The clocks blinked 3:12 a.m., no matter where I ran. The second hand ticked, but the hour refused to shift. And the funeral home, it wasn't just haunted anymore. It was alive. I made it back to the security office. It was different now, aged, covered in dust, the wallpaper peeling like dead skin. The after-hours log lay open on the desk, but the pages were wrong. They were filled in. Dozens, no, hundreds of names, all in the same rigid handwriting, each with an entry time. No exits. Thomas Gleason, clocked in. 1998, clocked out, not applicable. Marcus Reeve, clocked in. 2002, clocked out, not applicable. Eliza Ward, clocked in. 2010, clocked out, not applicable. Then I found my own name, already written in. Under it, clocked in blank, clocked out blank. Status, rehearsal in progress. My hands trembled. The air grew colder. And then I heard it again, behind me. Dragging feet. Not slow like a zombie. Rhythmic. Steady. Confident. I turned. He was there. Me. Wearing my uniform. Face clean. Smiling like a man who's already buried the hard part of living. He stepped into the room and stood beside me at the desk. No hostility, just expectation. "It's better if you let go," he said in my voice. "You've been working this shift long enough." I looked at the mirror on the wall. My reflection was no longer mine. It was his. My face, but quieter, dead behind the eyes. I turned back to the logbook. There was now a pen in my hand. I hadn't picked it up. "Just sign out," he said. "We need the room for the next one." Suddenly, the wall split open behind him. Not cracked. Split, revealing a hallway of coffins stacked vertically, each with names carved into the glass. Former guards, former mourners, former people. And at the very end, an empty drawer, labeled D. Carson awaiting completion. The other me extended a hand. Behind him, the chapel organ let out one long, final note, and everything went still. I didn't take his hand, but I wanted to. That was the worst part. The exhaustion ran deeper than my bones. It lived in my soul now. Like every step I took, every breath I fought for, was borrowed time. Time that Everest no longer wanted to loan me. I backed away from him for me. The other David, my double, didn't chase. He only watched, smiling patiently, like a man waiting for a cab he knows will come eventually. "Everyone signs," he said. "Even Alton did. That's how he keeps this place running." I ran from the office. The halls didn't look the same anymore. The wallpaper pulsed. The floors were wet, like something had recently crawled through them. The exit doors had vanished entirely. Windows, too. The whole building folded in on itself, each corridor leading back to the chapel. And now, the pews were full again, but not with strangers. With me. Row after row of Davids. Some freshly dead, others rotting, a few in caskets. All of them turning their heads in perfect sync as I entered. In front of them, the organ played. Alton was seated at it, his long fingers moving like bone spiders across the keys. He looked up once, his face drained of blood. "It plays itself now," he whispered. "I just pretend to be the one playing." The casket at the altar opened slowly. Inside, nothing. Waiting. The chapel doors slammed shut behind me. Locked. I ran to them. They wouldn't budge. The air grew thicker, like smoke, but colder. I turned, and the pews were empty, except for one. The little girl from viewing room C. The one with the stapled eyes. She sat in the front row now, holding a death certificate, my name on it, and beneath that, COD overtime. The walls began to bleed. Not blood, ink. From the logbook, pages torn from the after-hours ledger flowed like water down the aisle. My double stepped into view from the altar, still smiling, still patient. He extended the pen again. "Let it end. They'll give your face back." I dropped to my knees. and for a moment I thought about signing. But then I remembered something Alton had said the very first night. The ones who listen never last, but the ones who disobey sometimes find a fire exit. And suddenly, I knew what I had to do. The chapel was alive. The organ screamed in agony now, no longer music, just a shriek of pressed keys and howling metal. The pews melted into shadows. The casket at the altar throbbed like a beating heart. My double stood beside it, waiting, smiling. "Just sign," he said. "You don't even have to mean it." I stood slowly, ignoring the burning in my lungs, the voices in my head begging me to give in. I looked at the pen in his hand, black, slick, and dripping with ink that smoked where it hit the ground. Then I turned around, the back wall of the chapel post once, and cracked. A long split opened down the center. From it, hot air rushed out, fire. Not violent, not wild, but controlled. Like breath. There was something behind it. A red metal exit sign. Faint but real. It flickered. Like hope. My double stepped forward, voice no longer calm. No one leaves once they're written in. I ran. The chapel warped around me. Walls stretching. Pews slamming shut like jaws. The organ shrieked behind me as Alton screamed, not with rage, but sorrow. No more open chairs. He didn't sign. I dove through the split in the wall, into fire, but it didn't burn. Not flesh, only paper. The logbook in my coat pocket turned to ash. The name tag on my chest peeled off. The punch card burst into flame, and I fell through darkness. I woke on the side of Route 9, 2 miles from the funeral home. It was dawn, real this time. The sky was soft with light. Birds chirped. My body ached like hell, but I was breathing, alive. I walked barefoot, half broken, to the sheriff's station. Told them everything. They laughed. Said Everest burned down 10 years ago. Showed me a picture. Blackened ruins. But the address matched. I didn't argue. I just asked for a ride home. That was 6 months ago. I moved states. New job. New name. I don't sleep much. But sometimes, I still hear the organ. Softly. From nowhere. And every time I pass a funeral home, I check the employee board, just in case. Because deep down, I know Everest still stands. For someone. And it's still hiring. Shift open, overnight watch. Experience not required. Just endurance.